mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
Fasten your life jackets and prepare to initiate docking procedure. Are you ready, Mary, to continue and conclude our deep dive into the films of Christopher Nolan?
I am, but I left my life belt behind.
Oh.
Maybe an issue later on.
Never mind. Well, maybe we could just sort of reverse time and then,
Yeah.
correct that error, maybe.
I'll bang on some bookshelves and someone can remind me.
That's right, yes. I'll do it. So last week we were celebrating the 20th anniversary of Memento, although I forgot to mention it. And for this episode, it's been 10 years since Inception, which sort of characterises how he launched a lot of the second half of his career as well. And also, Christopher Nolan turned 50 this week.
Did he? Oh my God.
I'm sure he's messed with time again there.
Part of me feels like he should be older than that. The other part of me thinks, well, he's not been around that long.
It's amazing, isn't it? But yeah, I know what you mean. He's such a sophisticated person and director, I suppose.
He's very much an auteur, I think, and you don't get as many that have their own styles that are completely their own, that really stand out.
Yeah.
But Christopher Nolan is definitely one of them.
Yeah, he's stuck to his guns, hasn't he?
Yeah, you just know when you're watching one of his films, for many reasons.
Yeah, well, we were calling them Nolanisms, weren't we? And they're sort
I love that word.
Tropes and traits that characterise his films. And I thought it'd be nice to lay the foundation for what we're going to do this week by just recapping what we found in the last episode. So he had a tendency for noirish crime thrillers set in and around criminal underworlds. His films were usually non-linear puzzle structures that either start at the beginning or the end of a story that flash backwards and forwards throughout, manipulating time and chronology, often finishing with an open ending and thus demanding multiple viewings. They feature morally ambiguous detective-like characters who are psychologically hung upon truth, revenge, secrets, ideas and goals, often living double lives, either deceiving themselves or others for personal or professional gain, and they're usually centered on familiar core concepts like memory, guilt, obsession, fear, and position the viewer in the place of the characters so that we can question our own thought processes, actions, and morality as well.
Check for this week then.
And I guess the other thing is we saw him leap from increasingly larger canvases. So his debut film was just an experimental, no-budget thing, and all the way up until multi-million-dollar blockbusters, which just proves that he's got this ever-present artistic and commercial viability going on, which is absolutely something that we're going to see, I guess, from the very start of this episode, because the first film we're going to talk about is actually the number 4 film in the world on IMDb, which just goes to show how popular it actually is.
It's also considered one of the best blockbusters of all time, isn't it? Not that you think of it as a blockbuster. It doesn't fit into that style that you kind of think of, park your brain at the door. And
yeah,
he's got all that, but it's very much more sophisticated.
It's all in the themes, I think. Isn't it? We should go straight into it then. This is 2008, so 10 years after he did his first film, and this is The Dark Knight. And if you've not heard or seen of The Dark Knight, well, so...
You've been living under a rock.
Exactly. Where does this story pick up then? Batman is an established thing in the world of Gotham, but he's still a relatively new phenomenon, and people don't really know where they sit with him or where he sits with them. Like the police are working with him, but the official policy is, no, we have to arrest him.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, criminals are either scared of him or they're trying to copycat, mimic him.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. In a way, he's complicated things rather than necessarily instantly saving everyone.
Yeah. How can we give the summary of this movie in as simple a way as possible? Because it's not a simple movie in any way, shape or form.
No. I think there's a lot of things that people forget about the film, and one of the things is that Batman is very much an interim measure in Gotham, and Nolan's films actually only cover a couple of years. So I think one of the things that people forget about is that Batman doesn't want to be Batman. He's not this eternal protector. He wants someone else to take over from him.
Yeah, he wants to leave that life, yeah.
Yeah, which is where the new district attorney, Harvey Dent, comes in. He really wants to know if he can trust him to look after Gotham in safe hands, I suppose.
The White Knight of Gotham.
Yeah.
And Harvey Dent's a very cool, collected, in-your-face, direct character. And he's not afraid to pull his punches. He'll do what it takes, which is interesting for where his character goes, because again, it is morally ambiguous. As the film goes on, you see what he is willing to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it all goes wrong. And he does say at the beginning, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that very much signifies the plot for Harvey Dent's character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's something about he's got this really squeaky clean image, and he's a bit of a showman and a show-off, and he's kind of ideal. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of too ideal.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of his characteristics they're admirable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a fine balance, isn't there, between that and arrogance.
You know what happens to idols? They're gonna fall eventually.
And he has history with the nickname Two-Face. You know, the police know him as maybe not being as incorruptible as he seems.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely interesting setup there, which I guess is where the primary villain of the story comes in, because the Joker, I mean, there's so much to say about him, because at the surface value, he comes across as if he doesn't have a plan. Then you think he has got a plan, but then is his plan not to have a plan?
Yeah.
He wants to expose everybody.
Yeah, it's utter chaos is what he wants. He just wants utter chaos. And he does have a plan for that. And the thing is, it all looks like it's just chaos unwinding, basically.
Yeah.
However, he is 3 steps ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, it's like a chess game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And the 2 knights on the board are the White Knight and the Dark Knight. Oh my God, that's just clicked in my head. Yeah, he's bluffing, and he's playing everybody against everybody. Anything he can do to upset the established order.
Yeah.
Send them on wild goose chases while he can just sort out the next step in the background. He's a fantastic character, really.
I think his performance, Heath Ledger's performance in this, it envelops him.
Yeah.
There is no Heath Ledger left there. He is the Joker through and through. He committed to that role 110%.
Yeah.
I think his performance is so unexpected. It feels like it doesn't matter how many times you've seen it, you're still going to look at his performance and go, wow, right. Because you don't expect what you're getting from it. I was just going to say, for me, I haven't seen it very often. Watching it this time was only maybe the 3rd time I've seen it. Something like that. But I found that I didn't remember most of the plot at all. There were little bits that I remembered. But I had a big problem with this one. As good a film as it is, there is too much plot. There's too much of it, like, stuffed in there. Too much information, too much talking. There was, obviously, when we get onto The Dark Knight Rises, we'll talk about that and why I preferred that one. But I can't deny that The Dark Knight is a spectacular movie, because it is, but there's just too much packed in for me.
It's very fast-paced as well.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't let up, which is good, because it contributes to that sense of panic that Gotham inevitably goes through.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily an easy watch as well. There's a lot to unpack.
About 2 hours 40 minutes, I think, the film, but it feels like longer, because there's so much story in there to get through. It felt like a longer movie than it was. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. Most people obviously didn't have a problem with that, but I found it too much for me.
Yeah. I think more than anything, what precedes the film is not the novelty, but I guess the novelty of it being the very first superhero film of that kind. You know what I mean? It was marked as like the beginning of a new type of superhero film, even more so than Batman Begins. This was like the new milestone of what you can do, and I think maybe that reputation has sort of surrounded the film and lasted. I was just going to say one last thing about the Joker in terms of like appearance, because obviously it's such a huge thing to have a new actor playing the Joker, and it's weird to think that 2 more people have already done it since.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I like that in the beginning we're teased with the appearance of him. I mean, we must have seen promotional pictures of him before the film came out anyway, but Nolan knows that we were desperate to see what he looks like, and he sort of really leaves us hanging. Even throughout most of the first half of the film, you don't get to spend that much time looking at him.
That early scene with the clown masks, it's kind of like, I'm not showing you yet, but it's his face might look like this.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Oh, so good. The opening scene's brilliant. He started doing a lot of set pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're about to see lots and lots more.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think the Joker really does define that. I don't think it would be the same film if he wasn't in it.
Oh no, it's such a performance. It's risen above the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's something else, and I agree with that to the point of Jack Nicholson's Joker as well. They've transcended the film that they're in.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
And there's not many films that do it, really. And
Yeah.
in a way, I would potentially say that Joaquin Phoenix's role kind of did the same for his film.
Yeah. There's something about that character,
it's
isn't
that
there?
character, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's so much you can do with it.
It's got no boundaries, really.
And with this one, they ran with that because the more we think we learn about the Joker, the less we understand him. And I think that's terrifying for a viewer to think that you should be getting to know this person as you spend more time, but you kind of don't. And it's so good.
In this one, obviously, the inevitable choice that needs to be made, does Batman save his potential future life, or does he save Gotham's chance at redemption? And which does he go for? Does he choose the selfish one, or does he not? And again, this is the Joker very much already taken that out of his hands.
Yeah.
And that sets you up for where the movie's going to end, really. The choice of having a life outside of Batman is gone, but he doesn't want to be Batman either. So he just he retreats from everything, from the world.
Yeah, taking a lot of blame for things that weren't his.
Yeah, and takes the fall for what inevitably happens to Harvey Dent, the fall of the idol. But realises, maybe rightly or wrongly, that the city needs someone to follow and something to believe in, and that Harvey Dent, at his best, was that thing to believe in. So he takes the fall for all of the corrupt things that Harvey does.
Yeah. You said in the first episode that he wasn't going to recognise or experience a lot of the sacrifices that were going to come with the decision of becoming Batman. And I get, you're right in saying that that's where we really start to see it here. And this is obviously bridges into the third film, which we're going to do later on. But it goes to show really that although you could argue this film's more comic booky than Batman Begins, Nolan was still subverting our expectations of the genre as he went and making it his own.
I think I think it's fair to say there's sections of each of them that feel more like they've walked out of the comic book.
But I mean, it is really good. I mean, it's like you said, you can't deny that it's a fantastic film. I mean, all of his films are brilliant, so we have to say something about it.
Well, that's the thing with him. There isn't anything bad there, really.
No.
There's only things that are less good.
That's his curse in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much quality that...
Yeah, it's hard to live up to.
Yeah.
It is really hard to live up to. And that must be a lot of pressure.
He also starts to jump a lot between different genres, so he stops doing some of the same genres that he'd done before.
Experiments.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I guess that's a good segue. I guess so, to Inception. I was just thinking in my head, what genre is Inception?
Oh, God.
And I guess it's kind of like a sci-fi kind
sci-fi crime, I would say.
Yeah, crime element is still present. That seems to always be there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But so this 2010, and I've got to say that he absolutely exploded onto the scene here. He defined a new decade of filmmaking.
Oh, this is like unlike anything else. It is unlike any other film. It's hard to define what it is.
It is, I'm going to try. I think one thing to say about this is that even people who don't understand it still consider this their wow film. People still refer to Inception, I don't like swearing on the podcast, but the word mindfuck comes to mind. Like, people hadn't really seen things like this before, but this is holding the number 13 spot on IMDb, so again, just goes to show the popularity. Again, you're going to have to bear with me here, because like Memento, you have to do some exposition in order to actually say anything meaningful about this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and be concise. So this is sort of a return to concept filmmaking. This one is a film about dreams and the subconscious, but cleverly embedded within a heist movie. I've written it down here, it was a heist movie. And there's a very short line in the film that does explain what this idea is, what this idea of Inception is and where the dream thing comes in. Somebody says the military devised dream sharing so that soldiers could train to kill without actually having consequence. And what it basically is, you design a map or an environment or a dreamscape, I suppose. You sedate a subject, hook them up to this machine, and they populate this world with their subconscious. So, well, the tagline of the film is "The mind is the scene of the crime," or something like that.
Yeah.
So the story, basically, Leonardo DiCaprio plays Cobb. He works as an extractor. So his job is to infiltrate people's subconsciouses. I assume this is illegal.
Yes.
To steal information or secrets. Basically, he's a criminal hired for corporate espionage.
A criminal who doesn't feel much like a criminal, I would say.
No, well, it's reluctant because he's fled the USA because the government believe he was involved in the death of his wife, which I won't go too much into, but it's meant that he's had to leave his 2 young children behind.
Which is a huge thing for him
Yeah,
throughout.
yeah, and he's not even said goodbye to them. He's just had to literally up and leave. So, therefore, when one of Cobb's former targets, a man called Saito, who's a very powerful businessman played by Ken Watanabe, hires him on the promise that all the charges will be fixed and he can have a secure passage home, Cobb is going to put everything on the line for this last job.
A very big job.
His last chance to go home, last chance to be reunited with his kids. But, big but, this isn't an ordinary job. He's not being hired to steal information, but to implant ideas and information, which is Inception, so extraction, Inception. Specifically to make the son of a rival corporation, played by Cillian Murphy, again, who plays Robert Fisher, and they've got to try and make him decide to break up his father's empire. But there's complications. On the one hand, it's just really technically demanding. There's lots of detail about why the dream world has to be so convincing.
Most of them don't believe it's possible because they have to do a dream within a dream within a dream. So this is 3 layers.
Yeah.
They don't think this is going to be possible. There's a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
Ups the stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah, the example that they give as to why they'd have to go so deep is because if I was to plant an idea in your head, your subconscious knows that I've given you that idea. So they're having to fake true inspiration is the way they word it. You say, is it possible? Cobb seems quite confident. I mean, he's quite determined to get home anyway, but it seems that he has done it before with his now dead wife, ... Which leads to the second complication, really, because his entire personal life and past trauma undercuts the entire plot. He would design the dream world himself because he's an expert, but he can't because his subconscious is plagued, this is scary stuff, by these sort of terrifying projections of his wife, played by Marion Cotillard.
Very good in this. She's brilliant in this.
So scary. She's frightening. And she's like a ghost. Basically, she's a ghost. She appears and disappears and causes Cobb's subconscious to sort of glitch and attack itself. So it's not a great situation. But it's good for him in a way that because this job's so complicated, he needs to hire a crack team to pull off Inception, the dream within a dream within a dream. Which is a good way for me to introduce who's in the cast, really. And everyone sort of has a role. So already established, we know that Fisher is the mark, he's the target. Cobb is the extractor, and Saito is what they call the tourist, because he's the employer. He'll be in the dreams, but just watching that everything happens.
Yeah.
And then Arthur is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's already Cobb's partner, but he's the point man, so he's like the manager and the researcher for the mission.
Yeah.
Ariadne, played by Ellen Page, is recruited as the architect, so the designer of the dreamscapes. She's
very good in this as well. I was quite impressed. I don't always like Ellen Page and her performances, but I thought she was extremely good in this. She brings the humanity to it, almost the normal person's perspective of what they are doing.
Yeah, she's kind of non-fantastical. In her role, which makes her quite relatable, like you say, despite her being a whiz kid.
Yeah.
But she's a graduate of architecture. I think that's the story behind it. She's sort of been headhunted by Cobb's father, surprise, Michael Caine, who's a professor in Paris, I think. Then there's Yusuf, who's played by Dilip Rao, who's the chemist. He's the one that customizes and supplies the sedatives required to go that deep into a dream state. And then I've left him till last. I mean, I'm not just gushing because it's him, but Tom Hardy plays Eames, who's the forger. He's sort of an identity thief.
I really love Tom Hardy in this, and I don't like Tom Hardy very much, as you well know. And it's a clear point of contention between us. But I do love him in this. I think he's really good. He's got this really smart aleck, kind of witty character with great lines. He does have some really good lines in this.
Also, quite a lot that I think people forget about, because there's parts in the film where it's going so fast and you're in so many dreams, you can't figure out who's where, and people are wearing ski masks at one point and stuff like that. But the things that he does in this film, he's a researcher of people because he has to impersonate them convincingly enough in someone's dream to make them think they're real. So he studies the mannerisms and the physicalities. He's a pickpocket. And then later on, he's like the special ops combat weapons explosive expert. He's on snow skis. He's the definition of a smooth criminal as well. Like you say, he's got the charming, flirtatious banter, one-liners. And I've just written down here, he proves, if he chose to take it, what a great James Bond he would actually make. They're all qualities that Bond has. And he just does it with ease. And although it's far from the main character, this was a major platform for him, and he blew up. Like, this was the film that made him a big international star. So a special shout out to him. And we're going to be seeing him later as well, in a couple of films.
A couple of times,
along with Marion Cotillard, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine. All of them are going to appear in the next film. Yeah,
he's very much a person who almost has his own theatre troupe. Not always, not all of them come back. I'd love to see him work with Leonardo DiCaprio again, because I think Leonardo DiCaprio is very good in this.
Yeah, he's okay. So as a team, we watch them plan the heist, and that's really satisfying. There's not many scenes I'm going to draw attention to, but there is a montage where how complicated the plan is emphasised and how many layers within layers them and us as viewers have to consider. So even things like, where and when are we going to intercept the target? What needs to be done to implant the ideas, and how do they get back out of it all? And Nolan plays on this idea of falling in a dream, which we can relate to. Again, that idea of, you fall off a curb or something. So although we're told what they're going to do, we're not actually told how they're going to do it. And the heist starts at the 1 hour mark. Bear in mind, this is a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of it on edge, and there's complications, not least because Cobb's subconscious is threatening to ruin it all. And they have to improvise and change tactics. In terms of style, what does Nolan do in terms of helping us or not helping us navigate what's going on? Well, on the one hand, yes, he does help us. We kind of get an induction to what the whole dream thing is about when Cobb is inducting Ariadne. We're told bits of information like that, time moves slower in a dream, so he might show us the hands of someone's watch slowing down as we go into a dream or speeding back up as we come out, so that's nice visual clues. And then each character's got a token, like something that they carry with them that helps them decipher whether they're in a dream or not, and we kind of rely on that. As we're kind of promised that that's something that we can rely on. However, in just as many ways, Nolan blurs and conceals the truth from us. He's always got the upper hand. He can make us think that we're in the real world, and actually we're not. We're still in a dream. Things like the editing in the film, it's very fast. At times it's like a montage. Space is happening between the shots that we see, and therefore he can conceal details of where we are, how we got there. The cafe scene is a good one. He doesn't tell Ariadne that she's dreaming. And likewise, we don't know either. And then Nolanism, cliffhanger ending.
This is probably his biggest, most talked about ending as well, I think, out of all of his movies.
And I think it's because we feel betrayed by it. Like I said, we trusted him that these objects would tell us the answer.
I'm not sure, though. I was watching it and I thought, it seemed to be, bobbling.
It does, it wobbles,
his totem, it was like, so is it going to stop? Is it going to fall?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily clear that it is going to keep going, because it does have those few wobbles, like it's going to stop. You're not entirely sure.
I'm pretty convinced that he is in reality. I think it's just there as a little hint.
You just want him to be there, though. He has to be there. He's done so much. You want him back in a life that he can control.
I think, it's one of those things. It's Nolan's little way of making us apply the concept of the theme back to our own lives. He
It's
never
very
lets us
unfair.
forget it. It is a bit. And then lastly, special effects. I think this was the first film really that proper
Fabulous.
went crazy with the special effects, practical as well, but a lot of CGI too. The cafe blowing up, Ariadne redesigning Paris by bending it in on itself.
That was fantastic. I mean, that
so good.
It looks phenomenal. It really looks phenomenal.
Yeah,
there's
she does
nothing
all sorts
like
of
it.
Crazy stuff. But then also the things like the rotating hotel set.
It's amazing.
Which was all practical, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt did his own stunts in there, and it's just fantastic.
And knowing that adds to the film as well, knowing that it's real, that they really did that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is actually doing that, just makes it feel even better.
Mm-hmm. It's really quite spectacular. The behind-the-scenes footage of them filming that is great.
Unreal. It has been done before, but not to that degree, I don't think.
No, big sequences. Again, set pieces. But yeah, I'll shut up now. I'm going to shut up. Because you can go on and on and on about films like this.
You can.
But I just wanted to try and cover it all.
That's one of the nice things about Nolan's films is you can come back to them multiple times and see different things. You're not always going to get the same thing. You're not always going to feel the same way.
That is very true. I'm going to just leave you now to take us into The Dark Knight Rises, 2012.
Yes. So The Dark Knight leaves Batman in a very unsettled state, I suppose. Well, almost non-existent, because he disappears. He takes the fall for Harvey Dent, becomes public enemy number one, basically, and completely disappears. And Bruce has lost Rachel and just retreats completely from the world.
His purpose has just gone, hasn't it?
Yeah, he just disappears. And he looks old. He looks much older than his time. Yeah. We've moved on so many years into the
about 7
future.
years, I think.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And basically we get a new villain who very quickly starts his master plan, so to speak. And that's Bane, played by Tom Hardy. Now,
good.
this is the one thing in the film that I think most people had an issue with, and it was
Don't
the voice.
say the voice. I love the
voice. I think a lot of people couldn't understand some of the things he was saying. And I have to admit, when I was watching it, when it first came on, I thought, oh, this is not as bad as I remember it. It's not as bad as it was made out to be. But there were some things he said that I didn't understand.
After the cinema release, it was reworked. Like the voice was then changed. I've noticed it's a lot clearer now. But I'm of the opinion that I loved not necessarily always being able to hear what it just made him so sinister, I suppose.
Yeah, this is Tom Hardy 2.0. He's like huge. He's just a bulk of a man. He's just it's like a boulder.
He's so imposing, and I think that's why the voice contributes. It's like an animal. That's what I love.
Yeah, it's a very interesting choice for the voice, and it's very clear from the beginning that this guy's he knows what he's doing. He's extremely calm. He's extremely violent. Yeah. But it never really breaks out until he fights Batman. Other than that, it's just very controlled violence.
Yeah. And he's very polite.
Yeah, it's terrible what he does, but it's not lashed out. It's very controlled, very calm, which makes it even more sinister. So in this one, the violence and the crime is starting to appear after a period of relative calm. Yeah, under the Harvey Dent Act, basically.
Yeah, all which is based on a lie.
A lie, yeah. And you're very, Jim Gordon, at the end of this period of time, he wants done with it. He's very disillusioned with what he had to do. And talking about Harvey Dent like he is this hero, it's eating him up. You find out his wife and his kids have left him, and because he's consumed by his job, and he's always expecting things to go bad again, which I think is a good instinct, because it does. It goes really bad.
Yeah, he sort of becomes part of the curse that Bruce Wayne has. He's part of the secret, and it does destroy people. It
eats them up, and obviously as this is going on, you've got this policeman who becomes a detective, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who I quite like. And again, he's kind of the human side of it. He's like almost the ordinary person's perspective, very relatable. And he knows Bruce Wayne's Batman. He figures it out. He realizes, due to them both being orphans, and he kind of clicks the things together. And he puts the seed in his head that Batman's needed. And he does come out of hibernation, so to speak. And you've also got in here Catwoman, played by Anne Hathaway, which we're both on very different sides of the fence on this. I think she's fabulous. I just love her. I don't need any explanation for who, what, why, where she's come from. I understand your point in it is she could very much not be there. I do understand that, but she's just such a fun character. And Anne Hathaway, your message to me was the first 20 minutes, she's just fantastic. And she is, she really is.
That first 20 minutes is, some of her best acting she's ever done, in my opinion, but B, also some of the silliest character actions, I suppose, of any of the characters in the trilogy.
Explanations.
It's not so much that I think you need a backstory, it's just it didn't make sense that she was the only character in 3 films that didn't get any. Just to clarify my point, she backflips out of a window in heels off a several-story building and then just walks away. If it was Batman doing that, we would have been told at least something like he had some knee support or something. There would have been a visual clue or some kind of plot moment to explain how she's able to do these things. Later, she takes down a whole room of criminals. Later, she jumps out of a building and lands feet first on a window cleaning ledge. Like, just give us some explanation or some hint as to how she's doing it. Otherwise, we won't believe she's a real person. Whereas everyone else we believe is real.
I don't mind suspending belief here.
I don't mind. I don't mind. It's just I think it was a bit inconsistent that every other character we believed, but hers was doing magic stuff.
Well, I'm quite happy suspending belief. I quite like her, and I think she brings on the big first climax of the movie in the fact that she leads Batman to Bane, and it does end up being a trap. And what's so amazing about this, watching this, that Batman can't win.
Yeah.
You get this really strange feeling like, oh my God, this is not going to go well.
Right, yeah.
Because it doesn't happen with superheroes. The superhero wins.
Yeah.
And you're watching this and you're going, oh my God, he can't win this. And it really shows how far Batman's got to travel to win this one.
It's about going back to the reason he became Batman in the first place. It's not about how hard you can throw a punch or how resilient your body is. It's the spirit and the belief in it, which sounds corny. I do believe it in the film that he has to overcome fear again. Yeah,
well, he gets put into this prison that you can't get out of. It's basically a hole in the ground. And his body is broken, but that's not the issue. It's the mind. That's the thing that he's got to build back up as well. It's both. It is, yes, he can get his body fitter, which was the one point I had in the movie. Is my one problem is that he has broken his back, and in a matter of weeks is at peak physical health.
Well, it's at least 5 months because the bomb was timed for 5 months.
Yes, I know. I just don't
You text me saying a couple of days is back fine. It's like, okay.
It feels like that in the movie. It feels like it's a short period.
Time.
Yeah. And it just feels very unrealistic. The mind part, I totally believed. That was fine. It was the body part that I had issues with.
Yeah. I think it's one of the best ways that the trilogy came full circle.
Yeah.
I mean, Nolan obviously knew that this was a self-contained trilogy.
Yeah.
And quite often you get loose ends and things like that, but he was very much just linking back exactly to how we started, which I really liked. And the prison and the parallels to the well that he falls down as a child. I love that.
Yeah. That's one of the things I think I love about The Dark Knight Rises above the others. And it's the same with a lot of last movies in series. I love the rounding out of everything, the finishing of everything off. I've always found that really satisfying, and that's why a lot of the last movies in a series usually rate very highly with me, because if they've done it well, I like that.
I'm often the opposite, but I can't deny with this one that it is a very fitting end. Yeah. You can't deny that this is a really exciting and thrilling and fitting end.
So we should say, obviously, the big kind of second half of this is there's a fusion reactor that is built. Obviously, it would be sustainable energy.
Of course. It's also never explained how it works.
Yeah,
but...
no, it's not. But it's able to be weaponized and become a nuclear weapon, which is obviously what happens. And it's taken away from its reactor, basically, which means it's corroding and it will blow up anyway. It will destroy Gotham. And Gotham kind of falls apart. The prison's opened up again, just like the first one, and all of the prisoners are let loose, and the Scarecrow comes back again. He just appears.
He's persistent,
He's just always there. So he's running trials, killing people. Anybody really that is in a rich position or was in a high position in privileged life.
They say they're giving Gotham back to the people. Basically, you wreak havoc on the people who have made you poor, and they do.
And it's kind of all fallen apart, really. All the policemen have been trapped underground. So it's gone to hell, basically. And all the while, Batman's stuck in this hole, trying to rebuild himself and get back and be able to help. And I have to mention one thing I think is really fantastic in this movie is Marion Cotillard. She comes back and she appears again as, what's her name? Is it Marion Tate?
Miranda Tate.
Miranda Tate. That's the one. I think she's really good in this because
I can't decide.
I don't see it coming. She's just got a sweetness about her, I think. The character itself, the way she plays it. You just don't see it. She seems like someone, because she's so concerned with this fusion reactor and using it for good. You just don't think that she could possibly be the one that's masterminding all this, and it's not even Bane. She is the master villain. I was completely blown away when I saw it at the cinema because I just thought I just didn't see it coming. Bane was such an imposing character in the movie that you don't even consider the fact that he's not the main villain.
He's just the henchman, isn't he?
Yeah, it was so well done, I think, that point.
I'll give you that. I think, probably no one saw that coming. If I just make a reference to something like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, for example, where the big twist is, oh, well, it's the son/daughter of X previous villain, and you're just saying, no, it's not. Piss off. Stop it. Voldemort didn't have a daughter. Part of the conception of the character for me was a bit like, really? Could it not have just been someone else? It's always daughter of, son of. It's a very sequel-y thing to do.
Oh, I don't know. I quite liked that.
It's a bit cliched, I think, but they did trick us in a way because for a long time we were led to believe that Bane was the offspring of somebody else, and it's not.
Yes. I've got two things I want to say just to round this off. The first thing is, I think I definitely prefer this one to The Dark Knight. Not that The Dark Knight's not great, because it is an incredible film, but this one, there's a lot going on, but it's just more clear. It's not even a basic plot, but it just feels more basic. It's not quite as intricate. And obviously, like I said, I like things that are rounded off. I like the characters in this. I liked the new additions, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Anne Hathaway, and I really enjoyed them. And the other thing is, I've decided after watching this that I know who my favourite character is in the series, and it's Jim Gordon. He is my favourite. I've never been a big fan of Batman, to be honest. I don't like Christian Bale's Batman, really. I don't like his Bruce Wayne. I'm not a huge fan, really, of Batman. I love the movies.
It's more fun to not root for the main character, though, isn't it? It's more fun to root for someone else.
There's a lot of really great little side characters in this. You've got Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, and obviously Jim Gordon, Gary Oldman. You've got Michael Caine's Alfred. And
I think he's phenomenal in that.
He is. There's really great side characters that are in it. And I love Jim Gordon. I love his morality. He's got some great lines in the movie, and he's a good man at heart. He really is, and he's the one really that Gotham needs, because he's always there. He's always there to root for it and to, do what he can.
I just thought of something just then about when you said this film, it's almost easier to like it's not as difficult. If you consider the trilogy of the films in the same way he describes the magic tricks in The Prestige. So the first film, the origin story, is the setup, the pledge, it gives you the information. The second film is the turn, the twist of events, the ins and outs of what goes on. And then the third film is, more oriented towards the entertainment value, which is The Prestige.
It's very clever, really, when you think about it. He knew exactly what he was doing, yeah.
We said that the story of The Prestige mirrored how he made films, so it would make sense to apply that to how he makes trilogies too.
Yeah. So that was 2012. He went on from that amazing kind of finality of the series, that great end, and then blew everybody's minds 2 years later with Interstellar. And this is a movie we went to see together, isn't it? It's the only Christopher Nolan movie we've seen together.
Yeah, and it's probably only one of a small handful that we ever saw together.
Yeah. And we've both said on this podcast before what effect this movie had on us
in that moment,
seeing it in a cinematic environment with the huge screen and the sound, and it has to be seen in the cinema. Interstellar, I think it must be experienced that way. That's what it's built for.
I would argue all of his films, go see them in the cinema.
Well, they do, that's true. So basically Interstellar, it's got Matthew McConaughey as the main character, Cooper, who is a farmer. He wasn't originally a farmer. He was a pilot and he worked for NASA. But we're obviously not in present day Earth. We are far into the future where most food is hard to come by, hard to grow, has completely died out. The dust, like basically sandy air, it's just taking over. There's sandstorms and we need farmers, basically. There's no military, there's no NASA, there's no anything, because money is going into food, because Earth is running out of food. And due to a weird phenomenon in his daughter's bedroom, dust is falling in weird ways, books are falling off the bookshelves, but in what seems to be to Murph, the daughter, it's patterns, and she's looking into Morse code. She's an extremely smart child, I just have to say. Because I would not look at books falling off and think, oh, it's binary.
It's binary.
Or it's Morse code. Or, that would not be what I thought. I would think, I've got a fucking ghost in here. This is a problem.
Well, she did in a way, didn't she?
Yeah, she's extremely clever. And this leads them to finding these coordinates that lead them to this compound, and it turns out NASA are still running secretly below ground, trying to solve the problem of getting people off Earth. Earth is not a sustainable place for humanity anymore, and to survive we must look further afield. And they found a black hole with a number of planets that could be sustainable, and there was what was called the Lazarus mission, which sent off these 12 astronauts into space to look at these new planets to see if any of them were suitable for habitation for humanity. And that was 10 years ago, and some of them they're not hearing back from anymore, and a few of them, I think it's about three that they've had reports back. And Cooper is the only pilot left. These other scientists involved, they've never flown before, they've never been to space, they've never done any of that practically. So he kind of gets roped into it to saving the world, which has a terrible effect on his daughter. They leave things really badly, and that really kind of sets up the human part of the story. He wants to get back to his kids. He's doing it for his kids. It's a very scientific film, and I know they had advisors on this. So this is about as real as we can get the science to be.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the science has changed, but I know it was definitely correct when they made it as much as they could make it.
So it feels very grounded, and I think it's very much broken down into parts, into sections. So you've got the life on Earth, the origin piece of the story, and the NASA plan. And then you've got getting into space, the black hole and the first planet. And I think that's my favourite part, the actual aesthetic of it. That first planet with the water and the wall of water. There's just something about it that it just sticks in your head. It really does stick in your head.
There's an element of intrigue for us as viewers.
Yeah, we can't imagine what another planet would look like.
Yeah, interpretations of what alternative worlds could look like and how normal they can seem at first, but actually how aggressive they can be. Yeah, and dangerous.
And that's one of the things as well. Like they do say, you don't think nature can be evil, and Anne Hathaway is one of the astronauts in this, and she says no, she doesn't think it is. She doesn't think it's evil, no. But you can probably change your mind looking at some of this. Maybe not evil, but it's pretty damn horrible.
It's a very environmental film in a way, isn't it? It's kind of like, please value the Earth, because you could be living on this very cold 67-hour day planet where there's 80% gravity. You have to eat ice for breakfast.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle what Earth is. It's providing all of these things for us. And the aspect of time in this film is really important, and that's kind of what drives it's kind of like the ticking bomb to the audience, because it's explained to you how time works in this. So basically visiting this first planet, an hour there is years on Earth. So that's huge, knowing that they're there and the time is ticking away and it's years. They're going to be gone from the people that they love for a matter of years, and obviously things don't go well. And when they come back, is it 23 years or something? They've lost.
Yeah, the first planet they lose an additional 23 because of a complication.
Yeah, they have complications. Yeah.
With his other films, there's an element of sacrifice. There's always sacrifice, but I think this is the first time where the sacrifice isn't immediately visible or physical as such.
Yeah.
So their actions are affecting something, in a different galaxy, and they can't see or even predict exactly.
It's when they come back that you see just what the impact of that is. When he comes back and he looks at those over 23 years of videos and his reaction, it's heartbreaking. It really is. The things that he's missed, children and the death of children, and all of the things that he's missed in this time that he's been gone, and they don't think he's coming back. It's gut-wrenching. It really is. It's a hell of a scene.
They give up on him, don't they?
Yeah.
And there's nothing he can do about it.
They've moved on, their grandfather's died, his son's had a child and lost a child, and it's huge, absolutely huge.
It's another thing about, we said value the Earth, but it also speaks a lot about valuing, other things, close to home stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
And that leads on to the next section of the movie, the man's planet and the lie. You've got a cameo from Matt Damon here, who's very good in it, actually.
He's all right, yeah.
Hidden very well, because Matt Damon's not your usual antagonist of a piece.
No.
But he played it extremely well. And then you led on from that, this kind of blow that what they thought was going to be a place for humans and somewhere that we could save everyone, to no, this is another planet that's a loss. We've wasted more time and got nowhere. And then you find out that Michael Caine, who is kind of running NASA, and again, he's like his little lucky charm. Michael Caine's in all of the movies.
Yeah, he's good in this too.
He has lied to all of them, even his daughter. Anne Hathaway is his daughter, and went on this mission. She didn't even know that this equation that he's been working on, he'd solved it all along. And he knew that there was no saving Earth. That was it. They weren't going to be saved. There was no help. They were going to have to carry it on. They had this plan B.
Yeah. And he knew they would never end up coming back, that they would end up staying there.
They'd taken eggs, hadn't they, and they could build their own colony, basically, of humanity on another planet. That's huge. The whole film so far has been Plan A.
Yeah.
You're expecting this saving. It's all going to end well.
We've been tricked as much as they have. Again, he sort of tricks us.
And then there's the final part, which is, I think, the bit that most people have the biggest problem with.
Yeah.
The realisation of both Cooper and Murph of what's actually happening. And right at the very beginning, one of the first lines Murph says is, "I thought you were the ghost." And it's fantastic, because it's a great trick of Nolan's again, because that's telling us an answer to the big question right at the beginning of the movie. You already know it's been answered for you. Cooper is the ghost. He is transferring the information the only way he can in this strange kind of...
It's like a fifth dimension, isn't it? Or something
it's a fifth
ridiculous.
dimension, but they've made it look like a three-dimensional place for him. So it's a series of bookshelves that look into Murph's room, all different times of her life. And he transfers the information to her. And then you get Murph as an adult, played by Jessica Chastain, who is, again, she's very good in this as well. And she realises that all the time her dad hadn't given up on her. He's there. He was the one giving her the information.
Yeah.
And she is able to save the world, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that really stands out for me in this movie is the music.
Yeah.
It's a huge...
So good.
It's a key element of the movie, very questioning, like the audience, and it feels full of questions and almost otherworldly.
Well, it's a soundtrack that's not really like any other, and I think what's unique about it is that it's not a melody as such.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's patterns and repetitions and waves and walls of sound, and it's this galactic synthesized organ sound.
Yeah.
And I think in a way it's more implying time, gravity, space than it is implying the story and the emotions.
I don't feel like it's a soundtrack you would listen to just at home.
For fun. Yeah.
It works with the film. It's not really one that I would say, oh, well, I'm going to go and listen to Interstellar.
Yeah. I imagine if you had a big whiteboard at home and you were doing an equation, you would put it on.
Yeah.
That kind of music.
Bit of inspiration.
That's a good word.
I think overall, for me, the movie, I mean, I remember when we finished watching it, we were kind of like blown away and speechless for a good 15 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know why, though.
It does blow you away, the impact of it, I think.
It was the cinema experience, and I think watching it at home, I can't emphasise more, go and see his films in the cinema because you won't get the same...
No, it doesn't work on the same level.
Not a worse or a bad one, but you won't get the same.
You have to see it. You have to see Interstellar because there's so many groundbreaking things in it. The visuals are incredible. Just the idea itself, it's another one of those concepts. His concepts for movies are just immense. It is a must-see.
Yeah, Interstellar's the number 31 on the list of IMDb's top 250.
Yeah.
I like dropping things like that in.
Yeah, I mean,
You've probably noticed.
It just shows the quality, though. His movies do hit home with people. People do get a response, and that leads us on very nicely to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, really, because Dunkirk, it feels so long ago.
Also, it doesn't feel like his other movies either, I don't think.
Yeah.
Obviously, because he'd never done a war film before.
Yeah. The other genres, there's kind of links between them, I guess. Like you said, there's always a crime aspect or some kind of discovery or detective aspect to it. This one, no, completely different. His first war film, his first historical film, based on real events. All other things have been based on, remakes, like Insomnia, the remake of another film. Everything else was adapted from novels, comics, or an original script. So in this one, there's no cross-dimensional metaphysical worlds, no superheroes, nothing like that. That's not to say that there aren't a few signature Nolan stylistic traits in there.
Yeah.
Rather than talking story, it's more premise, I think. You're dropped straight into the action. In the immediate aftermath of an explosion on a French street, there's intimidating propaganda posters falling from the sky that say, "We surround you." And over the course of this first scene, titles appear and basically tell us that the British and French armies are being forced back to the sea. This is 1940, by the way, during World War II. And the soldiers are all trapped at Dunkirk beach. They're cornered and they're waiting for a miracle. That's the wording that's used on the title. They need someone to come and save them. And it's like, and I guess it's the same with a lot of war films, you never get a war film that covers beginning to end. You don't get the full 6 years in a film. You always get like a slice of time.
Yeah.
So this feels like, even though it's an hour and a half film, it's its own extended sequence, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's over a day, isn't it? It's just one day you're getting. Is it the one day or is it a few days?
I'll explain. Let's have a look. So speaking of time, so Dunkirk technically takes place between the 26th of May and the 4th of June, 1940. Okay. But Nolan blends and condenses 3 timelines and perspectives together.
Right.
So
I haven't rewatched this one, can you tell?
No, not at all. So On the one hand, you get 1 week of time on the beaches, on the ground, which primarily follows Tommy, played by Finn Whitehead, who's a young soldier. He's been separated from his group, and he repeatedly is trying to get himself onto a rescue ship. He's one of 400,000 soldiers that are stranded there waiting to be evacuated. And Navy Commander Bolton, played by Kenneth Branagh, his responsibility is to make sure as many of them get saved as possible, but they are being attacked constantly from above. Then you've got 1 day of time, which is Mark Rylance's character. He's Mr. Dawson. He's a sailor. His son and a local boy called George set off from Dorset coast after the Navy has requisitioned an entire fleet of civilian vessels to assist in the evacuation. Their story is basically as they travel across the channel, they rescue a shell-shocked soldier from a wrecked ship en route. Cillian Murphy's back, who warns them, if you go back, you will die. And then you've got 1 hour of time in the sky above the English Channel. There are 3 Spitfire pilots. One of them's Farrier, played by Tom Hardy. So when they're all picked off one by one, he's the only one left. He's got a broken fuel gauge. He can't determine how long he can remain in the air for. Ultimately, he has to make a choice whether he takes down that last enemy plane, knowing that he'll either die or be captured in the process. So 3 different timelines happening in one. So they intercut all the way through, and the time gaps between them are getting shorter and shorter and shorter until the 3 intersect. Tommy climbs onto Mr. Dawson's boat while Farrier shoots down the last plane above them, preventing the oil that seeped into the water, setting on fire, basically. So they save one another, and I think this sets up one of the biggest themes in the film, because it's not your conventional war film that's oriented around conflict and fighting. That's not the focus. In fact, you don't even see an enemy troop at all. Instead, there's a very different battle going on, and that's this struggle for survival. And you get that sense mostly with the soldiers on the beach, because they're sitting ducks, essentially.
Nowhere to go. Can't go backwards because the soldiers are there, and you can't go into the sea because you can't swim. You'll drown. Yeah,
they're almost waiting for the enemy to just pick them off from the air. They get described as like fish in a barrel. And when there is an attack, all they can do is get back up and just wait longer. And Kenneth Branagh's character can only stand by and watch. Like, there's nothing more he can do until the boats come in. So, dire situation. The story doesn't wait for convenient times for the attacks. I think this is really important. Nolan tells us as it was. It's always sudden and unpredictable and changes every character's direction, I suppose. In a moment's notice, someone's got to make a decision. Do I save myself or do I save someone else? But how do I save someone else if I don't save myself first? So there's always this element of, every man for themselves, but at the same time, it's a collective effort of we've all got to survive.
Yeah. The bit that sticks with me, because I don't remember a lot about the movie, but one of the things that really sits with me is when he gets on that boat and it looks like he's getting away, and then it sinks, and they're all stuck in there. They all drown. They can't get out. They're stuck in the boat. And it just happened that he's not in the room. He came out of it and was able to get off. But it's harrowing. It sticks with you because it did happen. And you know while you're watching it that those things happened. It's horrendous, some of it, to contemplate.
It's not a story you can write, is it? Like, you can't make this... Well, you can, but it's not the same.
The fact that it's history has a big point in it. And the other thing that really stuck out to me in this movie is the music. Again, and it usually does. I think the further into his career you get, the bigger the musical element has become. And this one was really important because it's ticking, isn't it? A lot of it.
Yeah, well, I couldn't decide whether to put the ticking in sound category or in the music category. Yeah,
it's kind of a blend, I felt.
Yeah, I think it uses both.
Yeah, but the ticking that you get in the background, it's like it builds up the tension, the pressure. You're completely aware of the time all the while because of that, subconsciously.
Yeah. Bit of trivia, that's actually Christopher Nolan's own pocket watch that they recorded and then synthesized and put in. Wow. But yeah, you're right, the clock ticking starts the second you start the film and it ends right at the very end.
Yeah.
And the idea of it building, just a note about what Hans Zimmer did with the music, because it is essentially a great big long 100-minute music track. The way that they make you feel that it builds and builds is something called a shepherd tone. I've looked this up. So if you imagine like an ascending scale of notes going up, but then fading out, do that loads and loads and loads of times, that's given the impression of a never-ending rise in pitch, because as one sequence reaches the top of the scale, another one's come in. It's a never-ending rise in pitch without actually rising in pitch.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but it mirrors the structure of the film because there's 3 of these sequences happening on different time scales, playing at the same time that all build to a climax at the same point. It's mad.
The music, obviously going through his films, it becomes not only just music, but it's a key element of the film, of how it works.
Yeah, and how you feel.
Yeah, it's become more and more and more important. He uses it absolutely perfectly.
I think on the other side of it, obviously, that's very oriented around dread and fear and tension. But there's an element of all of his films that we've not actually vocalised, and I think that's the theme of hope. There always seems to be something about hope. Even when it's someone doing something bad, they're doing it because they're trying to get answers. You know, they have hope for revenge, or they have hope for truth, or they have hope for something else. In this one, it permeates the entire film. Because although there's so much devastation and loss of innocence, you can see it in the characters, like the soldier that they pick up from the wreckage. You know, he's dehumanized, he's lost all sense of self. But on the other side, you can see how much every small victory means to everyone, no matter how short-lived it is, whether it's managing to get a stretcher, a wounded soldier onto the boat, or the sound of the engine kicking in, you know, when they're on the boat. And one of the best moments is when you see that fleet of boats, the civilians coming into view, and it's one of the most goosebump-inducing moments, and it's just a massive swell of relief because it's at the end of this very long scene. And again, because you know that was what really happened, it just adds so much more. As much as it is patriotic, it's humanistic. It just gives you this sense of pride that you see on Kenneth Branagh's face, especially. There's one shot where you can just see it in his eyes, like his eyes are filling up, and you just think, God, they couldn't get home, so home came to them. It's just perfect. The ending is bittersweet, because although they save 300,000 lives, there's that sense that, you know, the war wasn't over. The story was obviously going to carry on beyond the events of the film.
Yeah, it was right at the beginning. It felt like this huge victory, but really, it was 1940. There was 5 years of the war left. This was a tiny part of this huge event.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. It is a victory, but it's a victory on the back of a massive, what they describe as a colossal disaster.
Yeah. It makes it feel great, but really, this was terrible.
It's a very odd mixture at the end, because you're so relieved, and the characters are so relieved, but when they actually get home, they're just numbed. Obviously, Harry Styles had a small role in this. When someone says to him, well done, he just says, all we did was survive.
Yeah.
There's that element of, you know, what was it all for?
Yeah, they're not done yet.
Yeah. And you get that with the characters that have been left behind. So Kenneth Branagh decides he's going to stay and help the French evacuate too. And Tom Hardy's character, obviously after the thousands of lives he saved because of the sacrifice he made, he runs out of fuel. He's forced to just sort of glide and land on the beach, and he's captured almost instantly.
Yeah.
Some of the technical aspects in this film are just off the scale. I mean, basic note, not even really a technical aspect. They filmed on location at Dunkirk beach. Christopher Nolan found a button from an English soldier's uniform in the sand when he was there. They used real Spitfires. Some of the boats that were there, they, you know, came back, and they were in the exact same place they were when it happened, however many years ago it was now. Even when Tom Hardy's character's plane lands, that was the first time a plane had landed on Dunkirk beach since 1940. There's so many elements of history that were woven in. He had that integrity when he was making the story. It was about real people. Cinematography-wise, I mean, they had IMAX cameras in Spitfire cockpits, and it's phenomenal. The shots along and over the beaches, in the sky, above the sea, above the clouds. That final shot of the plane gliding down, just phenomenal. Underwater sequences you mentioned, being trapped under the water, the rooms are tilted 90 degrees and filling up sideways, all practical. You know, you've got water below you, sometimes you had fire above you as well. You really get that feeling, like with his other films, you're put in the position of the characters, not so much psychologically here, but physically. And you care about the people in the film because you're immersed in their reality. You understand the danger of the environments that they're in. And then sound. It's the most visceral sound experience I've ever had in the cinema. I was sweating, I was clenching my fists. It was a proper white knuckle ride. You really feel like you're there. You feel every impact. The bit that gets me every time is the planes that come nosediving out of the clouds and down towards them on the beach. And just when you think that the sound has gotten to its most intense, it doesn't. It carries on, and there's no sound like it. Oh, yeah, it won both sound Oscars that year, which absolutely deserved. Should have won for music. Should have won for all sorts. There's so much to say. It's incredible. It's one of my favourite films.
Wow.
There's so much to say that no matter how much time you give to it, you're never going to be able to do some of these things justice, but that's the quality of his work.
Just means you all have to go and watch them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go and watch all the movies.
I did a little calculation as like a final thought, because in my head I thought, as far back as Memento, he wasn't really in the whole Oscar territory. Nope, he was. He was nominated for 2. Batman Begins nominated for 1, Prestige 2, Dark Knight 8, Inception 8, Dark Knight Rises no, but nominated for a BAFTA. Interstellar nominated for 5, Dunkirk another 8. In total, 34 nominations. It's won 10.
Wow.
7 out of his 10 films are in the IMDb top 250. 6 of those 7 are in the top 75.
Wow.
I saw a quote from just somebody on the internet. They said the worst Nolan film is still better than 90% of films made today.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to agree.
That's probably true. That is probably true.
It is sensational what he's done. And is still doing. And I have much faith in Tenet still, as much as the cast isn't maybe who I would pick, but I'm ready to be blown away.
He went through a period where a lot of the actors were the same. But then if you look at the pattern, there are actors he's only worked with once. Like, Hugh Jackman and Leonardo DiCaprio. But then there's the ones that appear multiple times.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily against the grain. I don't really like any of the actors that are in Tenet from the look of it so far, and it looks extremely complicated.
But that's not stopped you before.
No, but the actual premise that we have been given so far is not me. It's not my type of film, so...
I think it's not going to be a long shot from the likes of Inception, but at the same time, even without being sold on the concept, looking at the trailer, like there are scenes where action is running forwards whilst other elements of that same scene are running backwards, and I think that is incredible. How do you conceive of conceiving that?
Oh, just the concept alone is going to... I have no doubt it's going to be incredible.
It's going to be incredible.
So,
but that's what he does. Yeah. He wins you over because of the execution. And I think this will be the same.
Yeah, if it ever comes out.
Well, 26th of August at the moment, it's come back.
Yeah.
After disappearing, it's now back.
Yes, we shall
see. What happens.
And that's it. That's Nolan.
That is Nolan for now.
We're going to end it here with just a little brief kind of bit on the news, really. We haven't had a lot again. It's a lot of it's rumours at the moment. Movies have moved again or been indefinitely moved to next year. Pretty much most of them, by the looks of it. We've had the death of Alan Parker. I think it was yesterday. In fact, he made Bugsy Malone and Fame.
You do Evita.
Yeah, it's British. A lot of British films or smaller movies, but quite a lot that everybody knows about. So, so he's died, and also Olivia de Havilland, who I think I might be wrong, but I think is the last of the Golden Age actors that was still alive.
Yeah.
She was 104. Which is incredible.
She was hanging on.
She really was.
I'm going to be the last one.
She was in Gone with the Wind, and she worked with the likes of Vivian Leigh, and she was in that era of Hollywood greats: Spencer Tracy, Clark Gable, James Stewart. In that kind of era, and there aren't any. I just don't think there's any left.
Cinema's still a very young art form in the grand scheme of things. It's 120 years old. So it's interesting now that we're encountering shifts from the origin of so much that we have today. So it is very much a new era of cinema.
Yeah, that's I think she was the last of an era. So it's quite sad in a way.
Yeah.
That it's now gone. There's nobody left to ask.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's sad and it is fascinating at the same time.
I would recommend going and watching some of her movies. The Snake Pit is extremely good. She won an Oscar for that, and The Heiress, which she won for as well. We'll finish off with our recommendations. So what's your recommendation this week?
Well, a bit like when I recommended Clue for the Back to the Future episodes, I've been an accidental genius in this one. I'll explain why. I've picked the film Enemy. It came out in 2013. It's by Denis Villeneuve, who did Prisoners, which I also recommended very recently.
Another Christopher Nolan type he's climbing the ranks.
Yeah, he's like the next. He's like second place in terms of the type of films. Yeah, so he did Prisoners, Arrival, Sicario, Blade Runner 2049, and he's doing the Dune remake.
He's very popular at the moment.
Yeah, this stars Jake Gyllenhaal, same as in Prisoners, and the entire film centres around him. He's a university lecturer, and his life is kind of empty, repetitive, monotonous. He seems very depressed, but one day he sees a doppelganger, double of himself, as an extra on a film, on a DVD that's recommended to him by a colleague, and he can't escape. He needs to know who this person is, and he kind of tracks him down. And it does indeed turn out to be a carbon copy of himself in the physical sense, not so much in the personality sense. And things get dark. It's a very simple, straightforward film in a way. There's not a lot of dialogue, but the atmosphere throughout can only be described as eerie. It's really unsettling the whole way through.
I haven't seen this one.
I watched it yesterday for the first time on a whim, thinking this sounds like it could be a good recommendation for a Nolan week.
Yeah.
And it was. His performance as two completely different personalities is stunning, and it just goes to show how good of an actor he is.
Yeah, he's very underrated.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favourites right now. And side note, he would be an incredible actor within a Nolan film. The reason I'm impressed with this choice is because I was trying to look for common links. So I've picked a puzzle film featuring men in suits who are dealing with a crisis of identity / self-deception / duality / doubles by playing detective and following other people. It's a what-if cerebral thriller where the characters are obsessed and paranoid over an idea filled with metaphors and symbolism with an open ending. I don't know if I could have hit any more Nolan traits if I tried. So I'm actually really happy with that recommendation. I only saw it for the first time yesterday. It's great. It's called Enemy. That's my recommendation.
Wow.
What's yours?
It's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. It is one hell of a title. It's also the title of the book, which I read this week, hence me watching the film. I'd seen it before. I liked it, but I was slightly disappointed. However, on watching it a second time, I enjoyed it a lot more. It's one of those cozy films. It's just, one of those you can sit and enjoy, happy ending, but it does have some strong themes in there. It's got Lily James in it playing a writer, and it's set in literally the end of the war. I think it's early 1946. So London's still in a state, and things it's still trying to get back to a normal place. And she is going to be writing an article about reading and its effects. And she receives a letter just coincidentally by a man on Guernsey, one of the Channel Islands.
Yeah.
And he had a book that used to belong to her. And it's amazing to think whose hands your book is going to fall into. And he happened to find her address in the front of this book, and he wanted to write to tell her, and B, because Guernsey no longer had any bookshops on the island, and could she recommend a good bookshop that he could get a certain book from. And that all leads to this relationship and learning about the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society, which was set up during the occupation on Guernsey. I
was just going to say, because when I was in Guernsey, we went to one of the underground hospitals, And I thought in my
Yeah.
head, I'm sure it was an occupied territory, and it was.
Yes, it was. The Germans landed in, I think it was 1940, and occupied the island the entire 5 years of the war. There was very little food. It was really, really hard for the occupants.
Yeah.
But it's an island, it's isolated. They had all of their radios taken away from them. They knew nothing about the world for 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's really strange. So you're learning all of these things about the occupation and what went on there, and how this society is made up of the villagers, and all lovely little characters. You've got an old man there, and an elderly lady who's in the group, and young feisty woman who's really kind of the point of the story. She's only seen in flashback, but she's kind of the heart of it all. And she's played by Jessica Brown Findlay, who was in Downton Abbey,
Right.
and I really like her. She's fabulous. I've liked her in all the things I've seen her in. And there's this kooky woman who makes her own gin, and it's filled with all these little lovely side characters.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. It is lovely. It's a cozy Sunday afternoon movie. Strong themes in it, in parts, but also a really nice storyline to it as well. So yeah, definitely a recommendation for me.
That sounds good. I'm intrigued by that.
And that's it.
So episode 28 will be our next one, and we're, can you believe it or not, celebrating 20 years of the original X-Men trilogy. So little 6-year-old Matt is pissing his pants with excitement. We're going to bring back the quiz. We're going to bring back some top 10 lists, some other interactivity.
Yes.
That's X-Men 2, X-Men The Last Stand, and yeah, have a bit of fun with that one.
Okay, so where can you find us, Matt?
Well, you can find us at cinechat.co.uk/podcast, or on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Just search CineChat Podcast. Or you can email us at
podcast@cinechat.co.uk.
Woohoo! Yeah. Tune in next time. X-Men.
It's bye from me.
And it's bye from me.